Cement makers will be hoping for a revival once the rains are gone as large contractors get to work again. Joining them will be affordable housing developers if budget provisions in terms of tax deduction do spur demand for homes. Although cement demand may pick up, what could remain a concern is the pricing, which had firmed up just before the seasonal fall ahead of the monsoon. So given the expected infra push post-budget and election, how does the industry view its chances of making a comeback? Let's put all of these questions to Mahendra Singhi of Cement Manufacturers Association. Mr. Singhi, thanks very much for taking out the time. What has it been on ground? Obviously, once we get over the monsoon season, what is the anticipation with the boost coming in from affordable housing to the fact that, we've started to see some amount of pricing rollback that's already been undertaken? How are these variables going to play out on pricing?
Yeah. Happy morning, Neeraj, Devila and viewers. First, let me say that the budget which has been announced is a welcome budget. Our finance minister and our government done a great commendable job in coming out with future vision, coming out full focus on infrastructure, full focus on connectivity, full focus on how we would be rolling out ourselves from 2.7 trillion economy to 5 trillion and then ultimately 10 trillion. So that augurs well for all sort of industry and more particularly infrastructure. All of you might have seen the way they have identified 1 lakh crore rupees for housing, then for road, then for power sector, then for railways, another plan of 2019 to 2030 for 50,000 crores. So this all augurs well for infrastructure, and definitely cement sector and steel sector would be one of the major beneficiary, and at the same time the way facilities would be created by way of road, by way of connecting airports, by way of connecting rivers also. So that would also be a welcome feature for the Indian public. And considering all this, what I am saying and seeing is that in time to come, the cement demand may again get revived. If I talk of 2018-19, the demand has been fairly good. It was just about 12 to 13%. But if I look at last 3 months and even the July also, the demand has been quite subdued on account of many regions, including the long election period in which there has been dislocation of workers also, and to some extent uncertainty in some states. But now, from July onwards, the expectations are that the government infrastructure spend would come out in the market. The rural economy should now take up, because a lot of money would be coming out in way of various schemes of the government. So from that, it looks like that cement demand may get revived, though the coming months from say July to let us say up to October, these are the monsoon months in which in normal course the demand is subdued. But we are not just talking of a very short term, but we are talking of a long term, and the cement sector as an infrastructure sector, as an important core sector which supports the government, which supports the country. So to me, it looks like that this sector will have a good future.
Mr. Singhi, just to extend that point a bit, so the focus now, according to you, remains on what? Picking up of volumes or making sure pricing power stays?
From Cement Manufacturers Association side, I would say that overall sector looks at volume, because volume is the important part, and that is what is required by the country also and by the manufacturers also. Now, price is all mechanism of demand and supply. So it has no relationship with whether there is a cost increase or cost decrease, but mainly it's a demand and supply. So whatever focus we may keep, but ultimately the market would decide about the price. So important for us is that how the demand grows, and demand has that relationship with our country's GDP, and if our GDP is 7% or so this year, then maybe we can grow by 8% plus, though the first 3 months has been quite subdued.
Right. So up until now, we've seen slightly more higher utilization rates, which gave some of these cement manufacturers the edge to go ahead and raise prices. Now the forecast seems to be that demand and supply will probably almost be at par, which means you won't see a meaningful uptick in utilization rates, which means the pricing will remain curtailed. You won't be able to increase prices in a meaningful way. Is that a right assessment? Because this is what we're gauging from, on ground when we're talking to cement dealers.
First, I would say that there is a mismatch between demand and supply. The supply is more than the demand. We have almost 530 million ton capacity of cement production in India, whereas in the last FY19, the demand has been only 330, 340 million ton. And even in these months also, the demand has been low in comparison to capacity. So capacity utilization might be rallying around 65, 68%, depends from market to market. So based on this, somewhere when demand is good, prices tends to go. When demand gets subdued in a big way, price tends to go low. So whatever focus we may keep, but ultimately it's the market which decides it.
Okay, got that. Let's dwell a little bit more on pricing. All India average cement prices around 366 rupees per bag during the month of June, which was a dip of 2.5% almost month on month. West and southern regions have also seen a dip in month on month pricing by about closer to 3.5% odd, 3.5 to about 4.5%. Is the pain likely to continue from a pricing standpoint, considering government project cancellations that could hamper demand, halting of illegal mining, sand mining activities, which results in slowdown of construction activities, and now the sudden talk of how the Karnataka government is looking at banning new construction till the water crisis is stopped. So that, if that comes about, some of the real estate players have been talking about it, but that would also obviously impact cement manufacturers too.
First, I would say that Cement Manufacturers Association doesn't have any role on pricing, so it will not be right on my part to comment on pricing. But at the same time, whether it's a sand mining ban or whether it's a impact of 3 to 4 million ton total consumption of cement in Bangalore area, etc., these such factors do come in the whole such big country here and there. So that for a short time definitely impacts, but not in a big way. And as I have said, that we are looking at long-term scenario, and for cement sector, to me, it looks like a good sector which can support the requirement of housing, which can support requirement of infrastructure.
Do you assess that the Indian cement industry could grow by about 7 to 8%, around 7 to 8% this year as well? The overall growth?
Or growth may be demand growth may be 7-8%, provided whatever say government has committed that all funds does come in. That is one. And second is still it's not very clear that how investment, whether in cement, steel or any other sector, how investment would be motivated. Like otherwise, if we look at last 2 years or so, there has not been much demand. And that's why if you see even in cement sector also, there may be capacity addition of say 4 to 5%, and that is also becoming year by year difficult on account of problems in getting acquisition of land, problem in or delays in certain clearances, etc. So my take is that maybe in few years to come, the addition of cement capacity may be around 4% or so, whereas the demand growth may be 8 to 10%. But we all are now waiting for what sort of investment, what sort of money which comes in rural India and in infrastructure.
Okay. Mr. Singhi, good morning. Neeraj here. Just one question. You mentioned that 7 to 8% growth numbers would be subject to some of the monies that have been talked about come in. If that doesn't happen, Do you reckon there's a possibility that
Yes.
cement demand, by and large, could moderate to maybe 5 to 6% over the course of the next couple of years? I mean, a slowing economy would probably lead to a subdued demand across industries and maybe
Yes.
across cement too.
Yes, so it's everybody's guess. Like if our GDP has to grow, then cement would grow. If GDP doesn't grow, then in isolation, it's difficult for cement to grow. And that's why if we are optimistic about our India's growth economy story, then yes, cement would grow. And if there are certain pessimism because of any right or wrong region, then definitely it can come down. In past also, it had happened. And both ways, cement demand had gone up also. Like if you see last year, because of some good demand from infrastructure, including road, including affordable housing, as well as from rural side, the demand has grown. So we believe in what government has said so far. We believe in the investment which will be coming in housing, in railways, in metros, in road. And Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which talks of 1.98 crore houses, etc. So I think it augurs well, and we as a optimistic people do believe that India's economy would grow, and that's why along with that we would also grow.
Okay, we leave it at that, Mr. Singhi. Thank you so much for taking the time out. All the best for the quarters ahead.
Thank you, and all the best for the economy.
Yep, for sure. I think everybody needs it. Thanks so much, Mr. Singhi.